Hello GCC Chem 107 students. This is the third video for Chapter 8 on drugs. We're up to a new category of drugs, opiates or opioids. What do those two terms mean? And they are different, although people use them interchangeably all the time. But technically speaking, opiates are naturally occurring chemicals that come from the opium poppy plant, such as morphine and codeine. Now, opioids are semi-synthetic or completely synthetic chemicals that bind to the same receptors as opiates. Examples of synthetic opioids include tramadol, Demerol, fentanyl, and methadone, while heroin, oxycodone, and hydrocodone are examples of semi-synthetic opioids. Opiates and opioids are used to treat pain. They are considered the main essential treatment for pain. They can also be used to stop coughing, so you'll see them in really high quality cough syrups that require prescription. They can also stop diarrhea because they cause constipation. And they can lessen anxiety. So those are all reasons you might be prescribed an opiate or an opioid. The World Health Organization, WHO, says opiates are essential in the treatment of severe pain. However, only about 6 countries use 77% of them. Poor countries are severely lacking good pain medications, and that's unfortunate. However, we kind of have a problem with opiates and opioids, don't we? It's kind of an epidemic. It's alleged in the US we have an opiate epidemic due to overuse and abuse of these drugs. We hear all the time on news about how they're overprescribed, and then people become addicted, and they go from one ER to one doctor to another ER to another doctor trying to fill their prescriptions. They get sold all the time on the streets as well. Several pharmaceutical companies are being sued right now due to the many overdoses and deaths of patients prescribed these drugs. What do you think about that? How do they work? Well, opiates work directly on the central nervous system, relieving pain by binding to the opioid receptors, which then block the transmission of pain through the spinal cord up to the brain and create a higher level of dopamine, which makes you feel good. So again, the drug blocks the communication between the damaged cell where it hurts in your brain. Extreme tolerance and addiction can quickly develop to any opioid. What this means is you need more to get the same effect of the drug. So maybe you start out just taking one pill, but after a week, one pill's not cutting it anymore. So you want 2 pills. So you develop a tolerance to it, and then you get addicted. Some adverse reactions to opioids is vomiting, drowsiness, dry mouth, and constipation, which is why it can be used against diarrhea. Addicts experience very unpleasant withdrawal symptoms, such as confusion, profuse sweating, depression, the pain, vomiting, and nausea can all occur. Addicts are often treated for their withdrawal with clonidine and tranquilizers such as benzodiazepines, Schedule IV drugs. Antidepressants are sometimes used also later because depression usually develops when you're addicted. Some examples of opiates and opioids. One you have probably heard of, morphine. That is used for the highest levels of pain. Usually this is in an IV drip, and it's very addictive. You don't get prescriptions for morphine. You just get that in the operating room in the ER. For example, you had kidney stones. They might give you some morphine for that kind of pain, but you're not going to get this for just a cut. Oxycodone is for moderate pain. It's often combined with acetaminophen, an NSAID. This has the street name of hillbilly heroin or oxy. Oxycodone is known by Percocet. Percocet. Hydrocodone is also an intermediate pain reliever and a strong cough suppressant with possible addiction as well. That one's also combined with acetaminophen sometimes. Hydrocodone, that's your Vicodin. Methadone treats chronic pain, and we use it to get people off of heroin and morphine. Its street name is junkie juice. Codeine treats mild to moderate pain, but mostly you see it in cough syrups. Tylenol 3 with codeine is another way you might see this. Codeine can be used to stop diarrhea. It's often put with NSAIDs, like I just mentioned, Tylenol 3. It's not abused near as much as other opiates. You don't usually see people on the street going, hey, you want some codeine? And then there's heroin. Heroin is made from morphine. 90% comes from Afghanistan. Now, heroin is illegal, of course. It's very addictive, especially psychologically. It's 3 times more potent than morphine. It's also known as diamorphine, which can be prescribed in a few countries. The UK, Netherlands, Germany, Switzerland, for example. But here in the United States, it has no medical usage. It is illegal. Some more examples. This one's fairly recent. Fentanyl. It's a synthetic opioid that is, my gosh, 80 to 100 times stronger than morphine. This is causing a lot of overdoses. It's often abused. Sometimes it's sold as heroin, and it's pictured there to the right. People often don't know there's fentanyl cut in with their heroin, so they don't do the correct dosage, and thus they overdose and die. Another example of an opioid is Demerol. Treats moderate to severe pain, has high risks of addiction. And then last of all, there's Tramadol. It treats moderate pain and restless leg syndrome. It's very atypical of opiates. It has some SSRI and SNRI qualities, which means used to fight depression. Those are antidepressant drug qualities. However, the withdrawal is longer than most, so not a good thing to get addicted to, but it does have a low risk of addiction, but the withdrawal is awful. Here are some carbon line drawings of morphine, oxycodone, and hydrocodone. You can see they have a lot of similarities. They have 4 rings, 3 in the plane of the screen, and do you see the darker lines that are thicker? That means that ring is coming out towards you. So it's not flat in the screen, it's sticking out in front. That's what that means. Do you see the little wedgy ... slashy lines? That means it's going back behind the screen, so it's going backwards. So that's what those slash lines mean, and then the thick black lines. Black lines are coming out towards you, the little dashed wedges are going away from you. So these are 3-dimensional structures, not just flat structures. New category, pseudoephedrine. Pseudoephedrine is a very powerful cold medication and decongestant. It used to be sold over the counter, but now it's behind the counter due to the Patriot Act of 2006. And it is controlled due to the fact that the ingredients can be a precursor to methamphetamines. So over-the-counter cold medications now contain phenylephrine, which is a much milder drug. So basically, if you want the good stuff for a cold, you have to go to the counter at a pharmacy and ask them for it. Pseudoephedrine is a mild stimulant, and it's sometimes abused by truck drivers. Because it's a mild stimulant, it is banned in Olympic sports. So again, pseudoephedrine is a cold medicine that is now sold behind the counter, and they do require a driver's license, and they track how much you buy. Eventually you get cut off if you try to buy too much. Antidepressants. It's a big industry. There are a lot of different antidepressants out there. These are drugs that are theorized to correct chemical imbalances of neurotransmitters in the brain. Neurotransmitters are the communication link between the nerve cells in the brain. They're released by one nerve and taken up by another nerve. Reuptake occurs when the neurotransmitters are taken up by the same nerve that released them. Many antidepressants work by preventing the reuptake, which increases their level in the brain. So if you prevent reuptake of, say, dopamine, you're going to have more dopamine in your brain, which makes you feel happy. So the neurotransmitters in the brain specific to depression are serotonin, dopamine, and norepinephrine. Let's talk about those 3. Selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, SSRIs, control serotonin levels. They're used to treat depression, social anxiety, panic disorder, PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, and OCD. Example SSRIs are Paxil, Zoloft, and Prozac, which is pictured to the right. We can see in the Prozac molecule we have lots of carbons and lots of hydrogens represented by the line drawings. We also have some fluorines that we haven't seen in any other drug so far. Serotonin and norepinephrine reuptake inhibitors are another type of antidepressant, SNRIs. And there's norepinephrine dopamine reuptake inhibitors, NDRIs. Those are used to treat ADHD, depression, narcolepsy, and fatigue as they provide energy, focus, and alertness. Examples of SNRIs include Cymbalta and Effexor, while there's only one NDRI, bupropion, and it's sold under the name as Wellbutrin and Zyban. Now let's talk a little bit about norepinephrine. That kind of gives you some energy. So if you're depressed and have no energy, you're more likely to get an antidepressant with norepinephrine reuptake inhibitors in them. Dopamine is a feel-good, kind of like serotonin is. They're both kind of feel-good chemicals in your brain, but it depends on how you are as to which one works better for you. So they kind of come in all different flavors. There's serotonin, norepinephrine, and dopamine, and you have to mix them all just the right mix for each person. So it's kind of hard to figure out which antidepressant is going to work correctly for an individual. And I think we'll stop this video there. We have one more left. Thanks, GCC.